I think that works.
Testing 1, 2.
All right. What's up, everybody, to a brand new episode of Over the Top Talk. I'm your host, Owen, and today I'm interviewing UFC fighter Connor Matthews. How are we doing today?
Doing awesome, man. Doing great. Just got done sparring. Some good rounds today, so just here at the recovery center, just hanging out, chilling out, so it was good.
You kind of want to start by letting everybody know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. From Massachusetts. I grew up here. Grew up in Freetown, Massachusetts. Been doing martial arts my entire life. Initially, I was actually a hockey player. That was my whole life goal, to be a professional hockey player. Didn't really pan out. I got hurt. Started fighting. Fought for a couple of years. My first fight was in 2011 for Cage Titans. It was actually Cage Titans 3. And then fought for a couple of years after that, and then I ended up joining the military. I was a combat controller in the military, which is a special operations job for the Air Force, and I did that for 6 years. Went to Afghanistan, deployed, came back. I was kind of messed up in the head, so I started training again to kind of help my mental, and 5 years later, next thing you know, I'm in the UFC, so it's been pretty fun.
Yeah, and your originally first time on the Contender Series was obviously a loss.
Yeah.
How did it feel to go back on there and get a win and get that contract from Dana White?
It felt amazing. It was, especially because, coming off, I was 5-0 when I fought the first time, so I took my first loss as a professional fighter, and that was kind of like, demoralizing, and I was kind of like, did I make the right choice of getting out of the military? You know what I mean? There's a lot of things kind of going against me. And then I fought for Dana White's looking for a fight, and I won that fight. They told me they gave me another shot to come back on the Contender Series. So, to finally win the second time in the Contender Series was man, there's no better feeling I've ever had. So super, super grateful and, appreciative of that moment.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously stepping in the cage. Do you feel pressure? I know you spent some time in the octagon, Air Force. So is there like pressure when you go in there?
Yeah, there's always pressure. You know what I mean? The stakes are high. Like, especially for me right now, my first UFC contract. So it's like, I need the wins to continue to still fight in the UFC. It's easy to get cut. So, definitely a lot of pressure. Especially like when I first came back to fighting after my military career, I didn't really have too much pressure because I was like, it was just fun. You know what I mean? Coming to just getting in a cage. What's the worst that can happen? You get knocked out. Like, not a big deal. I was just having fun. But as I kind of climbed the ranks and started fighting and, fighting for a contract, fighting all that stuff, yeah, definitely a lot more pressure. I felt it in my first UFC fight for sure. But you learn from those. You learn from those things. You kind of figure out how to deal with it, and next time I feel like I'm going to be a lot better, spot.
What is your favorite part about being a UFC fighter?
Of being a UFC fighter, I mean, I get to train martial arts every single day. That's definitely my favorite part. I say this all the time. Is like if I wasn't going to be a UFC fighter, I would still train martial arts. So UFC fighter just really makes it official that I'm like, it's my job to train martial arts every single day. You know what I mean? So I love martial arts. There's negative parts. You got to diet. You got to do all this other stuff that kind of sucks too. But just being able to train and push myself and, you become the best person I possibly can be through being a martial artist.
Perfect. And you mentioned kind of, how does it feel to have to make weight? Is that difficult for you? I've talked to a couple guys, said that's the hardest part. So honestly,
for me though, it sucks. You know what I mean? You gotta be disciplined on your diet, and you know what I mean. Ask me this, 2 weeks out from my fight, I'm gonna be bitching about it. But like right now, I know what I mean. I'm in a good spot. I eat consistently, pretty healthy in between. I'm not one of those guys that really let myself get crazy out of weight or anything like that. So it's not the hardest thing I've ever done, comparatively to other stuff I've done in my life. But it's not fun. But yeah, it's not that bad. I mean, right now I'm walking around at 164 today. I woke up, I fight at 145. So, it's definitely a lot of weight to go. But a lot of the guys I'm fighting are bigger than me though. Like the Jais Ferreras was like 6'2", 6'3". This next opponent I'm fighting is 5'11". A lot of these guys are pretty big. I'm like kind of an average size in my weight class.
And once you guys weigh in, can you just like gain a bunch of pounds?
Yeah.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, so I weigh in At 145, obviously, by the time I step into the octagon, I'm usually up to 166. I was actually probably heavier the last time. I was like 167.
Yeah.
So yeah, I put on that size all back on. So, which is nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've had bad weight cuts though. Like usually a bad weight cut is like I'll still make weight, no problem. It's the rehydration portion after you make weight. And for my first Contender Series fight, I walked into the cage at 153 pounds, but usually I gain, 10 plus
Yeah.
more than that. So that was bad. I didn't have a good fight. So you got to be disciplined before and after your weight cuts and make sure you're doing the right stuff. I've screwed up a couple times doing that, but I'll be better next time. Sure.
What's your least favorite part about being a fighter?
Probably the CTE.
Yeah.
Just kind of knowing that, like, it's like I don't mind getting hit in the head, and I don't have really bad symptoms. I don't think yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I get rocked, or that's me saying I don't. But some people think I have bad symptoms, but like I getting just knowing that you're getting hit every single time you get hit. That's one little like you think like a penny away from like you so have so many of those you can take, and so that's just something that's very concerning to me for later on in life. But that's it, man. I mean I love competing. I like sparring. I like all that stuff. So but that's this just knowing you got to be careful. Like definitely something you don't want to do for the rest of your life is get hit in the head for sure. Especially with all the other shit I did growing up, like extreme sports and hockey and military and all that shit. Like I've definitely hit my head one too many times.
Out of all your fights, what would you say is like your favorite one?
My favorite fight was definitely the Jaius Ferreira's fight. That was my best performance.
Yeah.
I fought the best guy, beat a 10-0 guy. So you know what I mean. I showcased all my striking. I hit him with head kicks, hit him with the flying knee, hit him with some good boxing, got great takedowns. Basically, I showed myself who I am in that fight. So that's probably my best performance for sure.
And kind of how does your training go like before a fight? Obviously, you're training right now. Do you have like a time when training camp starts, or are you always like?
Well, right now I'm basically in training camp. I'm 8 weeks out, so usually I give myself 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So today exactly 8 weeks, and I just sparred. So, training camp. I honestly probably hit the same number of training sessions per week.
Yeah.
It just gets a little bit more intense and a little bit more disciplined with like my strength and conditioning. A little bit more disciplined with everything. Really, it's just the intensity of the actual training room is a lot more intense. And then we start working game plans and getting sparring with specific guys to kind of simulate who I'm fighting. So that's the main thing though. But overall, like training wise, I'm always in the gym. I'm always practicing, trying to learn, grow.
Yeah. So obviously next opponent's Jose Delgado.
Yep.
He's coming off of, I think, a 5-fight win streak.
Yep.
I think this is his first like official UFC fight. How do you kind of control his momentum walking into that cage?
I mean, I can't control his momentum besides just getting into his face and fighting him. You know what I mean? I don't worry about what he's doing. I worry about what I'm doing. Yeah. That's uncontrollable. What he's gonna do is uncontrollable to me, right? So I can only control me. So the way is just I stick to my game plan, stick to the things I'm gonna practice in fight camp. I don't just go out there and just do something completely random that I wasn't practicing this entire time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes that happens. The people lose their self on fight night. So it's just stick to the game plan, making sure I'm disciplined for this fight camp. So one thing I always say is like make sure after I get done with my fight camp that there's no like I know I did everything I possibly could do to win that fight, and then you go in there and you fight, and whatever the result is, there's the result. But as long as I know I took all the steps I could possibly take day in and day out to make sure I did in the best possible like chance of giving myself a chance of winning that fight, I'm happy with my result. That's it.
And with like traveling, does the UFC like pay for all that, or do you guys kind of have to?
They pay a portion of it. They pay most of it. Like they're gonna pay for my flights. I think a couple. My coach, maybe 2 coaches, they pay for. But I usually bring 3. 3 coaches out there. So yeah, they'll pay for that. Lodging. I'm going out there early, so probably not the whole time. Sorry, excuse me. But I'm going out there 10 days early.
Yeah.
I try to get adjusted to the time and stuff. So, they don't pay for everything, but they pay for most stuff for sure, which is cool.
And are there any fighters like in the UFC you've kind of looked up to?
Yeah, a lot of fighters that I looked up to for sure. Just the local guys, we got
Yeah.
Calvin Cater, Rob Font. I grew up at Joe Lozon's gym, so those are guys, local UFC fighters that I've definitely looked up to. Grand scheme of guys, like Jim Miller has always been a big hero of mine. I like Max Holloway is a great fighter. GSP is one of my favorite fighters as a kid growing up. I've definitely had a lot of fighters that I've always looked up to for sure.
And do you have any like dream fights at the moment that you would want?
No, people always ask me that. I don't think I have. There's not fighting to me is not personal. You know what I mean? And then I know as soon as I call somebody out, that then it makes it personal between people. So it's like I don't really have any fighters. I mean, I'll fight anybody, whoever it is. You know what I mean? It's just like, even if I have a great opponent that I'm going to go against, it always brings the best out of myself. So like, I'm up to that challenge. And but yeah, no, there's no very specific people that I want to fight at this point in time. So.
And like, do you guys? How is the fight like chosen? I know you guys are in like a pool. Do they kind of just call you whenever there's an opponent there?
Yeah. I don't know exactly how we. So you have like Dana White doesn't really do the matchmaking so much. It's more like Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard, and I don't really know how they do it, to be honest. Depending on the person is, you know what I mean? Some guys, they're feeding, like say Sean O'Malley in the earlier portions, they wanted that guy to grow him to be a champ. So they were setting him up for success and, giving him good fights so he can build his way up. Some guys is on the other side of the spectrum. They feed you to the good guys. I feel like the UFC's been pretty fair to me so far. So, you know what I mean? They gave me some big comparable level guys. Besides my contender series fight, that guy was pretty good. But still, we're still fighting for contracts at that point in time. So, yeah, I think that they just kind of match you up when guys are ready, because you got to think, like, if a guy takes a lot of damage, people get injured, so that those guys are not able to fight at certain times. So I think it's just kind of they try to set you up to a comparable fight. I mean, there's no easy fights in the UFC. That's what it comes down to, though. You're gonna fight a guy who's 8-1, 10-1, 10-0. Everybody's around the same record. So.
And kind of, when was that moment in your career, like before UFC, that you knew you were gonna make it?
I never knew I was gonna make it. I didn't know I was gonna make it. I had a self-belief that I was going to make it. Chip on my shoulder. People tell, like, it's just like anything else. Like, I'm sure people doubted me, or I felt like people doubted me. Maybe I made that up in my head, but I felt like people doubted me coming up. So I just had to prove it to them and to myself that I was going to make it. If anything in life, you have crazy goals. When you say your goal out loud before you make it, everybody thinks it's a crazy, stupid goal. When I was getting out of the military and I was 27 years old, and they're like, I was just like, I'm going to be in the UFC. I said that to a couple of people. Like, I said that out loud, and they're like, all right, dude, that sounds crazy. You know what I mean? But, I made that happen. So you got to believe in yourself before you make other people believe in yourself. And then people start believing in you, and then that kind of changes the whole perspective.
And the last question I got, do you have any advice for anyone that would kind of want to get into the sport?
Yeah, I think martial arts is good for everybody. Everybody and anybody, from little kids. I think it's super important. Like, I started doing martial arts as a kid. It teaches people how to win, lose. It teaches people discipline. It teaches people. It takes away ego out of a lot of people, because people think in their head. Everybody thinks in their head they have this natural ability to be able to fight. And this kind of realized, good to know that, maybe I'm not as good as I thought, which will make you more humble. And so I think it's very important for everybody to learn martial arts and train in some sort of fashion. If it's boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, anything, it just makes you a better person.
Perfect. And for everyone that comes on, we give them a chance to kind of shout out anything they want, like social medias. So I'll give you the floor for that.
Yeah, follow me on ConnorMatthews.UFC is my Instagram. I have a website, controllermma.com. That is I have merch on there. So if you go on there, go and grab some merch, grab a t-shirt. All that stuff helps me out a lot. We should have some new stuff dropping pretty soon. And follow my gym. I have his Mom's Basement MMA. We got a couple other UFC, not UFC fighters, but guys coming up that'll probably be in the UFC pretty soon. Andrew Valdina, Joe Poirier, Pete Freestyle Striking is my striking coach down there. So we got a lot of good guys coming up. So give those guys a shout and look at them. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's it.
Perfect.
And wait a second, one more. Shout out to the Sanctuary for letting me use this recovery center right now. So appreciate that.
Well, thank you for coming on. I've never got to do one in person, so it's kind of sick.
Awesome.
But for everyone watching, thank you. Make sure to follow him, follow us. I'll put all the links down below, and I'll see you all in the next one. See you later, guys.